So now we will be walking you through of how we will conduct a design thinking workshop. Now I'll just set some context here on what we are trying to do with these slides. We are not doing an actual workshop here because the actual workshop is a 2.5 hours workshop where we kind of go through in details, of the process, and then giving them real problems and solving it. But here, what I will try to do is help you of rather give you some context of what these slides are. All these slides have presenter notes, so you will use that to kind of present it. It's very self-explanatory, but I will try to give a brief overview of what we'll be talking in these slides generally to the kids, and then how we will conduct a workshop by giving them real problems, and they can use that in a workshop model where you can get the kids in multiple groups, and they can kind of get a hands off feeling of using the templates, using the process. So it's just more of a training. So here we are, the intention of this is not to give you a design thinking workshop overview. It's more of explaining the slides to you and setting the context. Please, you try to improvise from there. Any questions, please, get back to us, either of the organizing team, the NMT teams, to clarify, or the innovation teams. The slides have been, it's an excellent set of tool that you can use to kind of read through and improvise. So I just want to set that context on what you can expect in these slides. Yeah. So we'll move on. So first is on the design thinking. You set the context on what design thinking is, right? So I mean, we all know that the general human mind tends to find solutions whenever you give a problem. But is that the ideal solution that we give, or that comes to our mind, is the first, or rather the first solution that comes to our mind? Is it the ideal solution? Maybe yes, maybe not, right? So, but in reality, the brain is programmed in such a way that whenever there is a problem given, we always go and give solutions. Now, design thinking is not that. It's not just going to tell you immediately what the solution is. It's a process. First, it's a it is a process for us to understand what the problem is, and what are the target audiences or the user groups for which we are trying to solve this problem. So the problem might be a generic problem, but when we talk to a specific user group, the same problem might be different for different user groups, right? So we just try to understand that key thing, that whether what is the actual problem and how are we going to try to solve it from a user point of view. It is not the solution that we give from a individual point of view, right? It is, you'll have to give the solution from the user point of view. So the key thing here is, how do we empathize this problem from a user point of view and find solutions so that it becomes practical and usable and it really solves the actual problem. So the goal of the design thinking process is to come up with such solutions or products or services which are desirable, but more importantly, it should be economically viable and technologically feasible. Some examples would be like, say, for example, if you're trying to solve a traffic problem, I mean, someone might come and say, I want to come up with flying taxis. Yes, it is a great solution to the problem, but is it practically feasible? Is it technologically viable? Maybe yes. Economically viable? Maybe no. Again, it might be different to a different user group. Say someone is coming up with a similar solution for a country like, say, Singapore, which is advanced, which is a developed country, and which will have all the energy and the capacity to build solution like that. So probably for them, it might be viable. It might be, so the same solution that you see might be technologically viable, commercially viable for a country like Singapore, which is your specific user group, but it might not be viable for a country like, say, India. So that's the difference, right? So you'll have to set that frame of mind that when we give solutions, it might be out of the box, but can be achieved for the target audience that we kind of desire to derive the solutions for the actual problems. So that's how you set the context for on design thinking. When we move on to the next slide, now, if you have to find solutions to problems, right? The key thing is your mind has to be, kind of free. It has to be an open mind. They always say, right, that you need to have a growth mindset. But when you are kind of solving something, we should insist on having a beginner's mindset. Now, our minds are always, kind of clustered with a lot of judgments. We have a preconceived notion, whether it is from family, friends, or society. So you'll have to clear that vision. So we have to set that context to the kids, that saying that don't have a preconceived notion on anything. Have a beginner's mindset. And like how the Japanese say, the mind should be like a valley so that it can hold water. right? So set that context and then talk about the glacier, right? See, normally what happens in picture two, right? We always try to find solution or at the surface level. The top 15% you see is is what we kind of look at. Whenever there is a given problem, then we try to solve at the top 15% level. But if you actually go deeper and find your right target audience, the right stakeholders, empathize with them, and understand their actual problem, in reality, you might find that the real problem lies in the bottom 85%. So that is what we are trying to solve using design thinking. So it's not like you go and give a solution at the top 15%. You try to iteratively follow a process and really understand that the solution which is beneath the iceberg. Now, one key thing you also have to mention here is some kids might not understand what is iterative. So give them some examples of what an iteration is. It's like a loop. It's not like a linear thing, like point A to point B. It's a repetition of tasks. So just be simple enough to tell them what a iterative processes means, so that they don't confuse what it is. I mean, it depends on what kind of school, what context you're setting. So you'll have to take that call. Some kids are advanced; they know what it means, but you'll have to make that call as a presenter. Now, then we talk quickly about some great design thinkers, right? I wouldn't spend a lot of time. There are enough notes on the slides. Just go ask the kids who they are, create that interest. If they know show them the photo first, and ask them, if they know them, and give the brief of what they've achieved. It's all there in the notes, so I wouldn't be touching upon it. So you can go through that. Similarly, it's not just with the great design thinkers are all men. We also have fantastic women who have been design thinkers as well. Show them those examples. So these two slides, what we are trying to achieve is to tell them that design thinking was always there. It's not like it's just a novel idea or a concept that has just come in now. So going back to how ISROs have been set up, and Amul, this classic example will give them a real time connection of how these simple people, and if you look at them, it's not like they are extraordinary people who are like like the Newtons, or they thought and they were all intellects. No, they are common people like you and me, who have really tried to solve problems by getting deeper into the actual problem, understanding their user group, and making sure that they've really empathized what is the problem that they're trying to solve, and they've created like wonderful solutions. So that's what you will be iterating in these two slides, that it is not that you will pull out something from the air. Anybody can do it. That's the agenda that we have to set up in these two slides. Anyone can be a design thinker. In this slide, you kind of make the kids read out the statement, right? What is design thinking, right? So you understand users, challenge assumptions, redefine problems, create innovative solutions to prototype and test. Now, in summary, what you're trying to do is you're introducing them the concept of a iterative process. Now, uh, key thing here, right? Understanding users. So talk a lot of empathy. Give practical examples of what empathy means. Probably even explain. Start with what empathy means, and you can give them few examples how you can empathize with users. Now, a classic thing that we have worked out when these presentations were done is we normally talk about how to design a park in the neighborhood, because it's a simple theme you can take and you can socialize this concept with the students, right? Ask them questions like, hey, look, if you have to design a park in your neighborhood, who are the users that you think that we should have? How do you empathize with them, and what are the kind of facilities you would rather want in a park? Now you can involve the teachers as well here when you do the session. Normally what will happen is they'll talk about, I need a swing, I need a probably a lot of trees, lot of greenery, some running area, some exercising area, things like this. So you'll have to kind of uh, nurture them to that thought process, that when they give these things, they are thinking about solutions. Not just solution, they're thinking about users. Now, for example, if they're talking about an exercise, they're probably thinking about a user group who are fitness freaks. If they're talking about probably a swing or a play area, they're talking about probably kids who wanted to come and play. If someone says that, yeah, I want a quiet area, with a soft launch pad where small infants can come and play, then their user groups is about infants. Likewise, someone might say, hey, I want a walking trail which has facilities for people who are challenged, physically challenged. Now then they are talking about accessibility. Now these are the different user groups, so you should drive this conversation in such a way that how do you empathize for a simple park. Now that's how a corporation or a municipality, when they're deciding to come up with a park, these are the things that they should think from a design thinker perspective. Now it's not like I just come and put up a park and it is of no use to anyone. You come and put a park, and where your target audience or users don't see the value, and if you don't solve it, then the park usage of that park is going to be minimal. Now, to make it to get to derive the maximum value, now you need to make sure that who are your user groups. So introduce the concept of empathizing, understanding your user groups, and what are those what are those facilities that they would want. Interestingly, what we'll do in the workshop is, right, once we'll ask them questions, they'll come up with a list of facilities. Then you introduce how you categorize them by user groups, and then you can also add on some things which they might have missed out, right? Talking about an accessibility feature, stuff like that. If they bring it, fantastic. If they don't bring it, introduce those concepts so that they know that how they can differentiate between user groups. And uh, uh, challenging assumptions is also very important, right? Because you might have come up with something based on a problem statement itself, or probably the problem statement itself was defined wrongly. So you will lead into a complete different solution. So after you empathize and you understand your users, you might have some assumptions based on what you think the solution should be, but you should be always open to challenge your assumptions. Don't be fixated on your assumptions, and don't think that that is the only way to solve. Maybe you assumed it based on a set of parameters before, but you might have to challenge and probably rethink of your assumptions. So have that open mindset. And that means when you challenge your assumptions, you will redefine your problems. Again, you can bring a lot of examples from the park example itself, but that will, when you connect with the audience, you bring those real time facts from them so that they can connect more. This is a probably a tip that we have experienced in our workshops. When you interact with kids, you can get more cues from them. So our suggestion is use that. So you redefine problems, and then for those redefined problems, you come up with creative solutions. Key thing is to prototype. Prototype is means to test it with your target audience, and test and test. So that's in summary what you will talk about an intro of design thinking. Key thing here is talk about empathy, and talk about a lot of examples on empathizing with users and designing the park example. Keep it simple, keep it approachable, and also make sure that they participate. So you can do it like a small workshop. So that's what you'll be doing in this slide. Now, then you talk about some theory, right? In terms of once you have done that, because spend a lot of time on the previous slide. Like I said, it has worked wonders, because practical experience of involving them, and a park is a very good example. It's a simple example. So use that, spend maximum time in that. Then you move on to what is the five-step process. And you clearly indicate that design thinking is actually an iterative process. You first empathize with different stakeholders so that you define the problem statement, and then you ideate. Now again, to for clarity purposes, this is not the problem statement that they've chosen for the competition. We are talking about re- going deeper and understanding the actual problem. So you have chosen, say for example, how to minimize traffic, right? That might be your broader problem statement. Now you need to define, how am I going to reduce traffic, where, what are the target users, which are the users that I will be talking about, and how do I make sure that I define these users. So that, to that level, is what we are talking about, defining the problems here. So you just have to set that difference, because they might confuse with the problem statement that they've chosen for the competition. So the first thing you do is to define, and to define the problem statement, you need to empathize with your users. That's what you would have reiterated in the previous slide as well on the park example. So once you have empathized with different stakeholders or your different users, then you kind of define the problem statement, the actual problem that you're trying to solve. That is the ideate stage. Now, in the ideate stage, sorry, that's what I mentioned was previously the define stage. Now, in the ideate stage is where you will try to wear your creative hat and find creative solutions for the problem that you have defined in the definition stage. Now, you might come up with multiple solutions. Normally, it's a good practice to pick the best solution that addresses the actual problem statement. And then you make a prototype. You move on to the prototype stage. Now, prototype is where you can come up with mocks, models, it can be a wireframe, whatever you feel like. But the key thing is, you come up with a prototype, and you make sure that it is relevant, practical, and then you move on to the test stage. The test stage, what you do is, you take the prototype and you test it with the same target audience or the same user group with whom you define the problem, so that you know whether it is relevant for them. Maybe it is, maybe you might have to make some tweaks. So in theory, from test you go back again to prototype and to ideate, and it might be an iterative process and it can go in loop, right? So that's what you'll have to set the context here. And finally you will arrive at the best possible solution. The key thing you need to again reiterate here in the presentation is, the solution can probably satisfy all user groups that you have chosen, but in some cases it might only solve a target user group. So what, how they are defining, to which target group they are defining for the competition, and in reality is something, because you are not only setting this context for the for in general on design thinking, right? They have to use it for the competition. So they shouldn't be solving problems of everybody, right? So they can pick and choose. They can clearly mention that, look, I'm trying to solve it for this specific user group, but that has to be clearly communicated in the templates as well. So give the tip so that they don't feel overwhelmed. So you can summarize here that it's a five-step problem-solving process. You empathize with the target group and the users for whom you're trying to solve. You define the problem statement, and then you ideate the problem by considering what is your actual problem, and then you ideate solutions for it. Once you have ideated the solutions, then you prototype and you make a visible presentation of the solution, and finally you test the prototype and get feedback from the user groups. Uh, just you can probably, you're pictorially showing them what is the process, but the key thing here, here is, from ideate you see those arrows go in a iterative process. It is no more linear. So from ideate you go to prototype, and then you test, and then you repeat. You might again have to go back and ideate, and then you might do a revised prototype, and then you might have to do a retest. So that's what you're trying to explain here. It is a iterative process and not just one linear process. And you can also give them some examples of problem statements and how to define them. uh, Call out those examples from the slide you see there, like a robotic automated solution or smart parking management. So what you're trying to say here is, how do they come up with problem statements, how do they derive a problem statement? That's what we're trying to achieve here. So give them some examples. That should be good enough for this. uh, Next slides is where you talk about uh, the empathy stage, right? So the each levels, what do you do here? So you just talk more about this stage. So in the empathize, you try to we have explained to them to the process, but now you kind of uh, understand the goals from the user, and what can be achieved with this method. You just elaborate a bit more. Two things you can do here is, you can observe and engage, watch and listen. Now, we have spoken enough about empathy, but it is very important that you keep mentioning about it, because if they do that, and if they kind of realize that, then I think 60% of their design thinking process is done. So reiterate again that it's very important that they converse to user groups. And when we say conversing with extreme user groups, what we mention here is, take the park example, right? At one instance, we are talking about a kid. On the other instance, we are talking about a elderly person. You're talking about a person who is physically challenged, thinking about accessibility. The other side, you're talking about a fitness freak. So these are your extreme user groups. So you're not going to choose the same set of an homogeneous user group and try to solve problems, right? So for the same solution, you'll have to involve extreme user groups. And how you can do it is by doing it as a direct interview. They can go and pick up a target user group and go and talk to them and interview about the problem that they are trying to define and dig deeper. Or they can do a great group brainstorming, right, wherein they can select or bring a set of user groups, and then you can give them a problem statement that, look, this is what we are trying to solve. What are your ideas about it? And let the group, the user group, discuss or brainstorm about what they think, and the students can then watch and listen in terms of what the group talks about, and take cues from there. So these are the methods. Why we are saying this again is for the students to make sure they can choose whichever method they want. If they have the time, they can do individual interviews, or if they think that they want to do group interviews, they can do so. It's just a way of how they can do the empathize phase. Again, mention the park example here, because and bring that relevance every time during a presentation, because you started with that. Each stage, if you talk about it, it just kind of re-engages them and makes them relevant to the context that we are talking, right? Uh, the next thing is, you go to the define stage. Now the key thing here, what we talk about here is, always think about when you're defining the problem statement, right? Any problem statement that they want to define, because they are now is a stage where they've understood their users and they know what the actual problem is. Now they have to define it. When they define, the key thing is they should start with how might we solve this. That's the logical step of, to define the problem. Now they would have collected all the details from the empathy stage, right? And when they define the problem statement, they should predominantly start, like I said, how might we. And you can also, think about it uh, uh, from a human centered approach, right? What we mean by human centered approach is, if you really think, let's say, for example, how do I put it, like, in the park example, right? If you say you went to a user group, and that user group, one of the person, you just put a character, right? Say, okay, Leo said that he wanted, a space for his pets to play, right? And for the other user group, we can say that, okay, maybe Sham said that he wanted a running track. Reason why we do it is, when we put names to it, then what happens is, you are actually taking and defining the problem with a human centric approach. You don't need to say that, yes, this group of people are saying that they want a fitness freak group is saying that they would want a jogging track. People who have accessibility issues are saying that they would need a separate pathway for that. So instead of doing that, if they put a name, it defines the problem better. So that you have a human centered approach. And two things you'll have to make them understand is, any problem that they define, it should be broad enough for thinking creatively, but it should also be narrow enough to make it manageable. Now, you can use the classic example that you have in the presentation notes, right? Now, if, for example, if you're talking about a problem statement for college students, right? So, if you say that the students aren't sure when the assignments are due, then that means that they need a new system for organizing their class assignments. And if you say that, okay, they just need a new system which should be kind of organizes the assignments by due date. That's one way of defining the problem statement. But the other way is, when you say that students who are taking like 4 or 5 modules find it difficult when they have different dates for each of these modules, because they've taken more than 4 modules, and they find it difficult when their assignments are due when they have different dates. Now, here what you're doing is, you're saying the same problem, but you're also telling them that students who have chosen more than 4 modules. So people who are actually chosen different modules and they have different dates, they really have a problem. And how do you categorize it, and how do you make sure that they don't miss their deadlines and lose marks? So your solution, when you think about solutions, right, when you are broad enough and narrow enough, it gives you that creative freedom to come up with solutions which you could have solved for everybody, but also your target audience is for choosing that specific people, or the key people who think that they need actual solutions for when taking more modules. So you'll have to have that difference. You can bring other examples too, but that's something you can probably explain regionally. I mean, specific to your case. Then we move on to the ideate stage, and now this is where it gets interesting, right? So ideation stage is where they come up with solutions. Now, key thing you indicate here is, when they come up with ideas, the ideas can be either how ideas, wow ideas, and now ideas, right? You briefly explained what they mean in simple terms. How ideas are original, right? But they might be costly, they might be difficult to implement for whatever reasons. It could be financial, political, budget constraints, whatever reasons. But they are long term. But whether it can be done immediately, maybe yes, maybe not. Again, in our context, say the flying taxi example. Yeah, it might be a how idea, but it is expensive. It might have constraints. So you really think it is difficult to implement. So that's what you mention as a how idea. Wow ideas are very simple and easy to implement, and these can be like really game changers, right? They can be like you use AI today to solve a lot of problems, right? That could be a wow idea. It's not very expensive. It's a small tweak, but it will be a game changer. That's your wow idea. Now, wow ideas are what something which we'll be looking in the competition. really, if you look at it, right? Because they use their creative hat and come up with solutions. Last thing is the now idea. Now ideas are quick fixes. These are your stopgap arrangements, which helps you to fill, the solution temporarily. They might not be a permanent solution. So you need to spend some time here because this is what they'll be doing it in their template. So you tell them clearly what is a how, wow, and now idea. Now, as an example, you will see we used an example which is applicable to our city, but take a practical example which might be applicable in your city, which might be traffic management, or traffic is a very good example of how you can use. So you can relate it to and how they can structure it into how, wow, and now. Make them do it in your workshop, which will give them a better idea. A sample that you will see is, so they are defining a traffic problem statement. So you start with, like how we said, when you define how might we, so use how might we solve the issue of bad roads to reduce traffic. Now in this case, the how idea could be, you can replace normal roads to alternative materials which can be also used from wastes, plastics, a lot of other constructive materials which can be used long term. But can we do it now? Can we do it at the cost? Can we do it at scale? Maybe not, right? So that's a how idea. It can be done. It will save a lot of cost, but in terms of practical usage, might be difficult. Now, same instance, a wow idea, which is simple, easy, first of it kind, last, and it last long run, is, say if you deploy an AI infrastructure and to identify where are the bad roads coming in immediately, and it gives you that view of in within your city or within your neighborhood, and which needs to be immediately repaired. So that kind of a thing is is an innovative way, and you don't even need to use manpower. Say for example, you use robots to solve these problems. So that's what you will be explaining here and telling that that will be a wow idea. Now idea is a quick fix. How do you fix the broken spaces? You put barricades or speed breakers, potholes. So this is a sample that you can talk about to make them understand, to talk about this issue. Here also you can use the same park problem, and in group, as a group, you can discuss what will be a how, wow, and now idea for the same park, building a park in the neighborhood problem that we spoke, right? You can bring that example here as well, and kind of brainstorm openly with the target audience. Yeah. The next one will be prototyping. Prototyping, it can be in any form, right? Sketches, paper, Lego blocks, digital, wireframes, mock-ups. It can be anything. So we don't restrict them. But the key thing you are introducing is they have to come up with prototypes for the solution, and whatever is feasible for the students, they pick up a choice of that and come up with solutions. So, and then the last stage will be testing. uh, we have spoken enough here, enough about this, right? So they have to go and get feedback from real or target users. They have to test, and then for the same set of users with whom they have defined the problem, and they might have to revisit their goals if they think that they have made wrong assumptions or different assumptions. And after the solutions, then they might come up with redefining their problems, and they might reiteratively go back to the ideation stage and retest. So you just explain the concept of testing and gathering feedback from target users, and if they're really achieving the solution for the chosen problem. Then you finish with the recap. You don't need to. It's self-explanatory. Empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. And then we kind of finish the presentation with a recap of what we have done. Now, at this point is where you will introduce them or take them to the workshop. Now, logically, we take a break here. You take a 10-minute break, and then because you've set the context, you have kind of introduced them the concept of design thinking, and you've made them what are the flows, what does it mean to each level. Again, a recap on wow, now, how ideas, and testing, prototyping, all those things. Then you introduce them to the workshop. So you'll have to you can choose either of those two problem statements that you see in the presentation notes, right? It can be traffic management or water scarcity, or you can pick up something of your own interest as well. Define, tell them this broader problem statement saying that this is what you're trying to solve: traffic management and water scarcity. And make the students sit in groups, right, once they come back from the break. And they have to choose either one, and they sit as a group, and then it will lead to the workshop, wherein you will guide them in terms of, for example, how we normally do is we break them into user groups, right? So some of the members can become the users, some of the members will become the interviewers. So they'll have to go and select the user group and define who the user groups are, ask them the questions related to problem statement, define the problem statement, empathize with them, do the interviews, go through the whole design thinking process, but do this in a workshop model. It would be really helpful that you bring, members from our innovation team and our YI teams to support it, because to do workshops, it is good that we go and guide these children in terms of how they ask the right questions, select the right user group. So that's how you start with it, and you go through the flow. You go through the flow of the entire thing, and now is the time where you will also introduce them to the templates. So please, in the boot camp, take a copy of the templates that we will show to you shortly. And then you print those templates and you give it to them, and each group has to fill the template. So it is a real-time experience for them in terms of, for the chosen problem statement here that you show, the traffic management, water scarcity, they can use the templates also to pre-fill and populate. So we will shortly show you the templates. So I'll just give you a brief overview of the template. It's a very self-explanatory and a fantastic template. So it has a lot of those inputs. So you will have to give one of these, or one or two copies to the user group, and it'll have all the, from the designing the solution, how they draw the solution, and it talks about the design thinking process. Just to reiterate, because they'll take it back for the competition as well. So it has all the steps, the processes, and then you can use this, for example, to design on your user groups for the problem that they've chosen. The empathize stage is where you'll have to ask them, like, hey, selected user groups. So they define the user groups here, and then list down who are the users within the user groups, and then it iteratively goes to the next stage. What are the type of interview questions, whether they are doing it as an individual interview or it's a brainstorming and a observe and listen category. So that's what they will mention here, and it continues, just to give them more, content to fill in. And then they capture the findings, and then this is where they define the problem statement, which will be done in the format that we specified. So if you see that it has the username, what they need to solve, and they putting a name to the user group and empathizing that. So just use this, explain the context in terms of how they will be defining the problem, and identify the radical ways. This is what where we spoke about the now, wow, and how ideas. So they should populate for the solution that they come up with for the problem statement. Any feedbacks on in terms of when they do the what feedbacks they've got from the user groups, they can note down here, which will be used in the iterate process when they go and get further feedbacks. So what when they do the ideate stage, reflections from the possible solutions from the target users, then you kind of build a solution, a prototype, take it back again to the user group for getting feedback. So, I mean, it's self-explanatory. I don't need to go through this template page by page. Whatever you have seen in the presentation is what we have indicated here in terms of a template. It's a very carefully crafted template, and they have to please make sure that the kids get a hands-on experience. So give them some time in your workshop to make sure that they fill in this and they get used to it, and then also take the, share the templates with the respective school coordinators, the teachers, the mentors, so that they also get a hang of it, because they are the ones who will be, supporting the kids, right? So please make sure they also get a feel, because this is very key. Unless they fill this, they won't be able to do proper ideation or modeling or prototypes, because normally some things that we have noticed is people straight away go and do the models, which is not desired, because this is a competition. The key thing is they have to go through the flow and the process and make sure that they've understood it, the templates are filled, and then do the prototypes. So that's how you kind of do the workshops. Again, any questions that you have on the workshops, the model, the templates, please feel free to ask the event organizers. Any questions that you have, we might be happy to help and support. I hope it is given an overview. Again, like I said before, this is not a workshop that we want to give it to the to the fellow trainers who will be conducting the city level workshops or the city level competition. It's more of a guideline of how you can present it, but you can tweak it, you can make changes, you can make it more locally relevant, and improvise. So I hope it's helpful. Any questions, like I said, again, please reach out to the organizing team, and we are happy to help. Thank you.